Hello. What we're going to do in this tutorial is something a bit more interesting. Still again with the texture mapping. And instead of looking at materials, we're going to look at textures. And what we're going to do is a technique called UVW mapping. And essentially, you have to think about it in a very simple way. Think that you have an object. Let's say you have what object I'm going to use. So let's say you have this object. As you can see, the material is plastic. We have a certain amount of glossiness, and we have a color which is white, and we have different diffuse color coming from different light sources, but overall it's a simple object with rather glossy than shiny white plastic. And then you want to apply a texture to it. We can apply texture the way we've done before, and you can see now on the screen with just picking up textures from pictures and then projecting them onto an object. Or we can do something a bit more sophisticated, and that's what we're going to do now, which is UVW mapping. And the way you have to think about it is very simple. Imagine this is my texture. So this is again a picture file, a JPEG. And with UV mapping, what I do is as if I project my texture onto my object. And because I'm projecting it, instead of just assigning it to the surfaces of the object, I can then specify the orientation of how it's projected, and I can also specify how it's projected from which point, and I can also specify the scale at which it's projected on into my object. So that gives you more control, and you're going to do that right now. We're going to take the blue box that we have here. So that's our blue box, and we're going to do things to it. So we're going to zoom into this blue box, just so that we, a little zoom, so we have a view of this box, and we're going to do something very simple. So here we have the texture of the box. We know how to do that, and we want to do something a bit different. What we want to do is, I don't like the texture at the top of the box. It doesn't look realistic. On the side of the box it looks perfect, because it looks like we're looking inside and there's the sand at the bottom and there's water. So it's as if it was a fishbowl. But the problem, or a small aquarium, but the problem is the top doesn't look right. So we're going to change that. So the way to do it is following these very simple steps. So please be careful to follow them in the right order, because now we're starting to get to a level of sophistication in the operation that we're performing on our objects and our scenes, that if you don't follow the order, the correct order, you might end up with options that are not accessible anymore, or even worse, you might end up with options that you can't, gives you the wrong results, and that's not what you want. So we start by selecting the object that you want to edit the texture. In this case it's this box with this C texture mapped, projected onto each side, and you want to change the top one. So we select the object, then we go to the modifier tab. So it's not create, it's modify, and here we choose, so we have to pick the object, and we go to the modifier list, and here we choose as a modifier list the unwrap UVW. So of course I could, as you can see, actually it's very interesting to have a look at this. You can see how many modifiers there are. There's hundreds. Do I know them all? No. Do you need to know them all? No. You need only to know the one that we are useful and that we need for the purposes of visualization and simulation of products. So we look at the Unwrap UVW and we click on that. So that becomes highlighted in our modifier list. So these are the modifiers that we can have access to. And so now we have our modifier list, we have the unwrap. We can then expand it, and we can unwrap by vertex, edges, or polygon. Of course, because we're talking here about the surface of a box on one side, so it's polygon. So we select that. Then of course, once we've done that, we need to select the polygon that we're concerned with. And so we have polygon. Oh, yeah, sorry. So you see again, if you don't click the right thing in the right order, you get into troubles. So we have this polygon. We have selected this. And then what we do, we have to make sure we're not into the box and we're not doing anything. Oh, sorry, we can do that anyway. No. So don't click the wrong place. Make sure you click on the Unwrap UVW and you click Polygon. Now that you have that, we have here also Polygon selected. We could have selected edges, we could have selected other things, but we want Polygon, okay? And what we can do now is we can move on and do a few things. So first thing we need to do is open the UV editor. So we look here for Edit UV down here, and we open UV editor, and we're gonna have an editor coming up. Here we are. So that's our UV editor. Let's leave this aside, and we're gonna go down to the projection, and we need to select planar map. So it's this projection. Okay, so it means it's projected as if we're mapping a plan onto a surface. Right. Notice something interesting is that the bit that's highlighted here is the bit that's highlighted here, and so there's a correspondence between the two. Okay, so next, what do we do next? I'm following the tutorial that you have also available as PDF, and the reason why I'm doing that is that you can follow either with the form or with the video, or both together. It's just following the same step. Right, so now that we have selected this, we can start doing things to it. Before we go any further, we have to make sure that we deselect this, and then we can start playing around with things. So, for example, we can start doing a rotation. Well, let's start with the scale. We can scale things down and up, and this is scaling down. Oh, we are in the wrong side, so we need to be on the... So here we are again. Where is it? Yeah, it's this one. Yeah? So, okay. So you can see the effect. If you zoom in here, you can see the effect of me moving this on how the texture is mapped onto the surface, how it's projected onto the surface. So we're still with the scaling. We're going to make it bigger. So what I'm scaling here is how this is the texture, and when I'm scaling that, so it's a bit counterintuitive, but we can scale either the object or we can scale the texture, and we can also affect how it's projected. But so be careful, make sure you have the right effect. This is not the right effect. The right effect that I want is this one. Okay, so make sure you select the right selection, and if you make a mistake, no problem, you close this, you do Ctrl Z, and you go back to where you are and you start again. So it's important that your selection is correct, otherwise you're doing the wrong operation. That's the key point that I'm telling you now, is that we're starting to reach a level of sophistication in the tool that we're using, that if your selection is wrong, it looks like it's doing something, it will do something, but it's not exactly, or it might be the opposite of what you intended to do. So be careful with that. All right, so we open the UV editor again, and we make sure we are in the scale. Yeah, so what you want to do, you want to do two things. We want to scale the thing down. So this is up, sorry. And the second thing, we want to move it. So we want to move it so that, and I will explain, here we are, so that when we look at our texture in our object, we have only blue. And that's what I wanted to do, and that's how, when I turn this around, I have the effect that I wanted. Okay, So we can do something else as well. We can, for example, rotate. We can, for example, we've scaled, we can rotate, we've moved, and so on and so forth. And that's all done here in the Open Editor view. Make sure you're selecting the right sides, the right surface that you want, the right polygon that you want to edit. And then you can do moving around, rotating, scaling, and you can also freeform, you can deform your texture. I can show you how to deform the texture, although that's not what I want, because the only thing I wanted is to have. So if I want to deform the texture, here's an example. And if I do, so that's moving it around. So let's first let's scale it, sorry, because you want to see our texture the way, how is it? Ah, I'm selecting the wrong thing again. Here we are. So here we are. So we're back with the texture. We can see the sand, and then when we do a rotation, for example, a rotation, we can see how the texture move around in the object. And if we do a freeform, we can then twist, for example, scale in one direction or the other. So like this, or we can extend like this. And if you stop, you can see the effect on your object. I'll zoom in like this a little bit more. Now, of course, let's make this a bit bigger so we have a better view of it. Of course, that's not what you wanted to do, so we can go back here, we can scale it again. First, we can rotate it, or we can just do something simpler actually. Maybe we just need that. So if we move, I'm clicking the wrong object. If we move it around, so you move it around until you have the effect that you want. It's visual, okay? So make sure to pay attention to your visual, to what you've done. See here, there's a mistake. So I can, because I've messed around, trying to do different things at the same time. So we can go back, Control Z. And here we are, back to where we wanted. Then we're back here. We open the UV editor. And we just move the texture so that we have blue screen. So of course you have to check visually what you're doing, because here we are. That's what we wanted. We wanted the box with the blue top. Yeah. And that's basically the end of this tutorial. What I would suggest you to do is to try different effects on different sides by clicking on the Open Editor, clicking on different sides, trying different effects, and see what happens. And just play around with it. It's the best way to do it. But that's basically the end of this tutorial. Thank you very much.